Something is wrong. You can feel it. You just cannot name it. You did what they told you. You studied and you worked. You paid the bills and kept your head down. And you are still slipping. The math on your own life stopped adding up, and nobody ever explained why. So the unease just hums. At work. On the drive home. At 2 in the morning doing arithmetic you already understand. Here is the plan for the next half hour. No outrage. No hustle harder speech. No manifesting a better mortgage. Just the actual numbers from the Federal Reserve, from the Department of Education, from Harvard. And by the end, that vague feeling gets a name, a shape, a source. Stay with me, because the source is not what people are shouting about online. Let me start with the strangest part. On paper, the country looks fine. The economy grows and jobs technically exist. The headline numbers glow green on the evening news. Then step onto a train at 6 in the evening and look at the faces. Nobody is living. They are enduring. A bad day used to mean heartbreak. Now it means a bill. Think about how big that shift really is. A generation ago, a bad day hit your heart, a fight or a loss, something human. Now it is arithmetic, a number on a screen that came in smaller than you needed. That is a strange thing to happen to a rich country. The pain moved out of the chest and into the checking account. The Federal Reserve surveys households every year, and the latest one came out in spring 2026. Most adults say they are okay. 73% describe themselves as doing fine or comfortable. Reassuring, right? Hold that thought, because the next number detonates it. 37% of American adults could not cover a $400 emergency in cash. Not a bankruptcy, not a lost house. $400. A transmission, a crown at the dentist's, a fridge that quits on a Tuesday. More than a third of the country sits one small surprise away from real trouble, and that share is barely budged in years. Sit with the contradiction for a second. Most people say they are fine, yet a third of them cannot survive a $400 hit. Both things are true at the same time. That is not confusion. That is a whole population learning to call a thin ledge normal. And that one word does a lot of quiet work. Normal. When the ledge is where everyone stands, it stops feeling like a ledge at all. You forget there was ever solid ground behind you. You start to think the anxiety is a flaw in your own wiring. It is not you. It is the ledge. The same survey found 91% name prices as a worry. Not politics. Not war. The ordinary stuff. The groceries and the rent and the insurance. And worry about keeping a job climbed too, up to 42% from 37% the year before. People are not imagining the squeeze. They are measuring it. This is where the dream got quietly rewritten. It used to be a house, a yard, a car in the drive, a life a little better than your parents had. Now the dream is smaller and sharper. That the grocery bill holds, that the insurance survives, that you walk out of the store without feeling robbed somewhere between the eggs and the milk. We stopped working to build. We started working to buy one more month. Read the forums where people talk straight and you find the same confession over and over. I am not living, one writes. I am just surviving. The money runs out before the curiosity does. Nothing is left for a hobby, for wonder, for anything that is not rent. The week collapses into a loop. Wake, work, eat fast, sleep, repeat. And a good Sunday sleep does not touch it, because this is a different kind of tired. A structural one. Let me be precise about that word, tired. There is a tired that sleep fixes, and a tired that sleep does not. The first comes from a hard week. The second comes from a hard decade, and it settles deep into the body. A short fuse in traffic. A flatness at dinner. That strange failure to enjoy the thing you finally have time for. That is not laziness. That is a person running on fumes and being told to smile. Here is something the cheerful reports refuse to touch. The future itself got shorter. It used to stretch out in years. A home by 30, marriage, travel, a warm place to retire someday. Now the 5-year plan is one question, repeated. How do I get through the next 30 days? We went from building a future to managing a slow collapse. Too busy patching the cracks to ever look up. And a horizon only 30 days wide does something quiet to a person. It shrinks the imagination itself. You stop dreaming. It costs energy you no longer have and points at a future you no longer trust. Ask someone where they will be in 10 years and watch the flicker cross their face. Not hope. Not a plan. Just a quiet calculation about whether this whole thing can even hold that long. And the exhaustion costs far more than money. A mind stuck in survival mode shuts down its higher functions one by one. Empathy, creativity, patience, joy. The brain triages. It keeps the lights on for threat and lets everything gentler go dark. Have you noticed people getting shorter lately? Angrier, quicker to snap? That is not a character flaw spreading through the population. That is a nervous system that is run clean out of headroom. So ask yourself something honestly for a moment. Are you more patient than 5 years ago, or less? Do small things set you off in a way they never used to? If the answer is less, do not reach for shame. Reach for the reason instead. A mind under constant money load has less room left for everything else. The patience did not vanish because you got worse. It got crowded out by the math. And if you recognize yourself in any of this, that recognition is the point. You are not a weak version of the people who came before you. You are a normal person carrying a load they were never handed. The feeling is real, and in a minute I'm going to show you exactly where it comes from. So the real question is why? Why do so many people feel this at the very same moment? Is the economy really the whole story? Or is something deeper cracking underneath? Let me answer with the single number that explains the most. For most of the last century, the deal was simple. Work hard, get a house. Nobody ever wrote it down. It was just understood, a quiet handshake between a society and its people. Do your part, and the door to the middle class opens. That handshake is broken now, and I can show you exactly where. Look at what a home costs against what a family earns. Harvard has tracked this for years. In the 1990s, the typical single-family home sold for about 3.2 times the median household income. 3.2. That was the world our parents bought into. By 2025, that same ratio had climbed to nearly 5 times income. The house did not get 5 times better. The family did not get 5 times richer. The gap between a paycheck and a roof simply widened into a canyon. And it happened fast. Between 2019 and 2024, home prices rose 48% while income rose only 22%. Prices ran at more than double the speed of wages. Picture 2 runners on one track, except one of them stands on a walkway sliding backward. You can sprint your whole life and the gap between you still grows. Let that ratio land, because it is the quiet engine under everything else. At 3 times income, a disciplined saver can close the gap in a decade. At 5 times, the same discipline, the same saving, the same sacrifice no longer reaches. Nothing about your effort changed. The target moved, and nobody sent the memo. You kept running toward the old number and wondering why it never got any closer. This is a thing that actually breaks people. Not hardship. People can take hardship. History is one long chapter of enduring hard things. What hollows a person out is something else entirely. I did everything right and I still cannot win. That is not the pain of personal failure. That is the pain of watching a system quietly stop paying out on a promise it made. Let me put a face on it, because the number alone is too clean. Picture someone, the daughter of parents who bought their house on one income in their late 20s. She grew up on their story. Study hard, work hard, and the door opens. So she did exactly that. She got the degree and took the steady job. She never missed a payment or blew the budget on anything reckless. She is 38 now, and she rents. The down payment she chases drifts further away every year she saves toward it. She is doing nothing wrong. She is doing precisely what her parents did. The difference is not her. It is the price of the door, and that is the quiet cruelty of the whole thing. She measures herself against her parent and feels like a failure, but they bought into a ratio that no longer exists. They were not more disciplined than she is. They were simply earlier. They caught the anomaly on the way up. She caught it on the way down, and nobody ever sat either of them down to explain the game changed in between. You see it clearest in the young. They went to college to escape poverty and left owing a fortune. The average federal student loan balance now sits at $39,633 per borrower. And that figure comes from the Department of Education. That is roughly double what it was in 2007. A whole starting cost of adult life loaded on before the first paycheck even clears. Think about that sequence because it is almost cruel by design. You are told correctly that school is the ladder out, so you climb it, and the climb itself hands you a debt. A debt the size of a down payment on the house you were chasing. The ladder and the trap turn out to be one object. You cannot reach for one without grabbing the other. Now here's the part that turns the screw. That debt used to sit quiet. During the pandemic, payments paused and then the relief ended. And delinquency, the share of loan dollars behind, tells the story. Late in 2024, it sat under 1%. By the end of 2025, it had hit 10%. 10. The trap did not just exist, it closed. Understand what a jump like that means on the ground. It does not mean people suddenly got reckless. It means a frozen bill came roaring back all at once. It landed on households that had rebuilt their lives around not paying it. The money that went to rent, to groceries, to the $400 buffer. It has a prior claim again. That number is not a story about irresponsibility. It is a bill returning to a budget that had no room left. So picture the whole chain at once. Get educated. Borrow to do it. The house now costs 5 times your income instead of 3. The debt goes delinquent under your feet. You did the assignment exactly as written. The assignment was rigged. You start hearing the phrases everywhere. The game is fixed. We were sold a lie. And here is what should stop you cold. People who agree on nothing else agree on this. Different politics, different villains, same conclusion. The effort stopped paying what it used to. The old dream ran on comparative words. More, bigger, faster, a bigger house than last time, a newer car, more zeros in the account. Listen to the dream now, and it runs the other direction. Let the bills hold steady. Let the insurance stay. Do not fire me by email at 8 in the morning. The ambition did not shrink because people got lazy. It shrank because the ground moved. And once a person stops believing hard work leads to stability, something underneath the whole society gives way. Think it through with me. If you will never own a home, if you cannot retire, if 10 years out will not be better than today, then why run the race at full speed? What exactly is the prize? So people withdraw, not with a bang, quietly. They stop trying to win the game and start trying to leave it. Life smaller, spend less, dodge the stress, vanish from the grind as much as the rent will allow. You see it in the movements that keep gaining pull. Off-grid living, tiny homes, quitting the corporate ladder, moving somewhere cheaper and quieter. It gets called laziness by people who never once felt the treadmill. But that label is the lazy one, and it is worth pulling apart. When a person steps back from a game they cannot win, that is not a moral failure. That is a rational re on bad odds. You would not keep feeding coins into a machine that stopped paying out. You would walk away and spend the coins on something better. The people withdrawing are not quitting on life. They are quitting one specific bet that stopped making any sense. Watch the labor market and the retreat makes cold sense. In 2025, the whole American economy added 116,000 jobs. That is the smallest gain in any non-recession year since 2003. Economists have a name for the pattern: low hire, low fire. Employers are not cutting deep, but they are barely hiring either. The doors are not slamming shut. They are simply not opening. And the old trick for a raise, jumping to a better job, quietly died. There is nowhere left to jump. This matters far more than it sounds. For decades, the fastest raise came from leaving. You proved your worth somewhere else and they paid to keep you. Or you took the better offer and never looked back. That one lever built an entire generation. Now the lever is stuck. When almost nobody is hiring, almost nobody can jump. And the raise you used to win by moving is off the table. You are told to be grateful you still have the seat. Gratitude does not pay a mortgage. So when people pull back, it is not weakness at all. It is arithmetic. If the escalator stopped climbing, you stopped paying full fare to stand on it. Now let me name something running quietly under all of it. Because this is where a surprising amount of the money leaks. Everything around you got optimized. Faster checkout, smoother apps, one-click everything. And the smoother it all got, the more your ordinary life quietly cost. That is not an accident. That is design. Look at how you pay for things now. You used to buy a thing and own it outright. Now you rent it, monthly, forever. The software is a subscription. The music is a subscription. The car locks features behind a subscription. Each one is small enough to ignore. A few dollars here, a few there. And that is exactly the trick. They are tuned to sit just under the line where you would bother to cancel. Add them all across a year. A real slice of your income drains out through fees you forgot you ever agreed to. And the prices themselves are not fixed the way they once were. They move. A screen watches what you searched when you tend to buy, how badly you seem to need the thing. Then it quietly sets a number aimed straight at you. The airfare that shifts while you hesitate over it. The delivery fee that only appears at checkout. The convenience that costs a little more each visit. Because the system knows you are tired and knows you will pay to skip one errand. None of it ever feels like much. All of it together is a slow tax on being busy and worn down. So here is the quiet math of your raise. It arrives, and before you even feel it, the subscriptions crept up. The fees crept up. The prices crept up to meet exactly what you can now afford. The extra never reaches your actual life. It gets intercepted on the way in. You run faster, and the machine just gets better at catching you. That is why the raise never feels like a raise. Something optimized was already waiting for it. And there is a second cost to all that smoothness, one that does not show on any bill. Every interaction that used to be human is now a transaction with a screen. The self-checkout instead of the cashier. The chatbot instead of a voice. The app instead of a conversation. It is efficient and it is cold. And it leaves you a little more alone at the end of each errand. You're paying more and connecting less. And somewhere in that trade, a quiet loneliness gets folded into the price of ordinary life. Now let me slow down because most videos on this subject get one thing badly wrong. The internet is full of people pointing fingers and they're all pointing in different directions. Read the comments under a video like this one. One says the problem is the president. One says the problem is the last president. One blames the billionaires. One blames the Federal Reserve in the day the dollar left gold. One blames immigration. One blames the wars and the money shipped overseas. One blames the phones. And every one of them is furious, and every one of them is completely certain. Here is the truth sitting underneath all that noise. They are describing the exact same pain. They just cannot agree on who to punch for it. And that disagreement is not harmless. It is the trap. Fight your neighbor over which villain is the real one and you miss the mechanism entirely. And frustrated people are easy to steer. That is not my line. That is a viewer, and they are right. Think for a second about who benefits from all that fog. Not you. When your anger has 100 targets, it has no force at all. It scatters. It burns hot for one evening and leaves you emptier the next morning. The buffer's still unbuilt. The debt's still growing. A divided attention is a defeated attention. The canyon between wages and homes does not lose an inch. Not why you argue in a comment thread. So set the blame game down for a few minutes. Not because responsibility does not exist. Because the finger pointing eats the exact energy you need to guard your own house. We can argue the culprit forever. The canyon does not care who you voted for. It just keeps widening. Maybe part of you is pushing back right now. Fine, you think, but somebody did this, and somebody profited from it. And you're right. Someone did. The subscriptions were designed. The prices were tuned. The rules were written by people who benefit from them. I am not asking you to forgive any of that. I am asking you to notice the timing. The forgiving comes later, if it ever comes at all. The protecting comes first. Your household cannot wait for justice to arrive before it builds a buffer. So, hold the anger. Just do not let it hold you. Point it somewhere useful and keep listening. And here is the most counterintuitive thing in this whole video. The one that reframes everything. You keep hearing that the country is collapsing, that we are watching some kind of fall. Let me offer you a different lens. It is not comfortable, but it might set you free. What if the calm, affordable, middle-class life people are grieving was never the normal state of things? What if it was the exception all along? Go back to that housing number one more time. 3.2 times income in the 1990s. Nearly 5 times now. People assumed the low number was the baseline, and the high number is the disease. But look wider, and the affordable decades start to look like the strange ones. A short window, propped up by a very specific post-war setup. Cheap land. Cheap energy. Rising wages. That was never the human default across most of history. Harvard's own housing researchers say it plainly. The broad middle-class home may have been closer to a historical accident than a permanent right. Sit with that idea, because it changes the emotion completely. If you believe you lost something that was rightfully yours, you feel robbed. You stay angry. And anger burns fuel without moving you a single inch. But if you understand the game quietly reset to older, harsher rules, a different question opens up. Not how do I get back what I lost, but how do I play the board in front of me? I know exactly how that lands at first. It sounds like surrender dressed up as wisdom. It is not. Accepting that the rules changed is not the same as accepting defeat. It is the opposite. The person who insists the old rules will return keeps playing a game that no longer exists. The person who sees the new board clearly can actually start to win on it. Clear eyes are not pessimism. Clear eyes are the first real advantage, because the young confirm the reset with their feet. The home ownership rate for households under 35 has slipped to 37%. First-time buyers now make up just 21% of all purchases, an all-time low. And a typical first-time buyer is now 40 years old. 40. A generation is not failing to launch. The launchpad itself moved. Read those numbers as a message, not a verdict. When the first-time buyer hits 40, the market is telling you something plain. The old timeline is dead. Buy in your late 20s. Build equity through your 30s. Coast into a paid-off home. That is not a plan anymore. It is a memory. And planning your life around a memory is how you stay stuck. The people adjusting to 40 are not behind. They are right on time for the new clock. Existing home sales have dropped to a 30-year low. The market is frozen. And a frozen market is not chaos. It is a market that priced out the people it used to serve. Sitting still. Waiting. And it will not thaw just because you want it to. So here's the reframe. Clean. This is not the sky falling. This is a correction. Not the moral kind. The structural kind. The anomaly is ending. And the people stepping off the treadmill are not broken. Some of them, without ever saying it in these words, simply understood something. You cannot win an old game with rules that expired. So they stopped playing it and started building the one thing the old game never offered. Room to breathe. That is not surrender. It does not mean giving up on money or moving to a cabin to grow potatoes. It means the goal shifts away from chasing a dream that was priced for a different era toward control. Control over your costs, over your risk, over the one variable you actually own, which is your own next move. So let me get practical now, because a diagnosis without a plan is just a nicer kind of despair. If the ground has shifted, here is how you stand on it. 5 moves, and each one is aimed at a specific number we just walked through. Start with the $400 wall. Take that statistic, the one where a third of the country cannot absorb a small shock. It is not a headline about other people. It is a target. The highest leverage thing you can build is a small cash buffer between you and the next surprise. Not 6 months. Not a fantasy. Just get yourself off the wrong side of that $400 line and then aim for 1,000. Here is why that first buffer beats anything fancier. Without it, every surprise becomes debt. The blown tire goes on a card, the card compounds, and the compounding follows you for years. With even a small buffer, the same surprise is just a bad afternoon and nothing more. That is the whole trick right there. A buffer turns a catastrophe into an inconvenience. Every dollar in it is a dollar the emergency cannot use to wreck you. Build it before you build anything else. And understand what that buffer really buys you, because it is more than money. It changes how you sleep. It changes how you make decisions at work, because you're no longer one bad week from disaster. A person with $1,000 behind them negotiates differently, walks away from bad situations differently, breathes differently. The buffer is not just cash in an account. It is the first piece of ground you get to stand on again, and standing on solid ground changes everything above it. Second, stop measuring yourself against the anomaly. Compare your life to a housing market from 30 years ago. You will feel like a failure at a game that stopped existing. Measure against the board you are actually standing on. The person who understands the new ratio and plans around it wins out, over the one still waiting for the old one to return. Every single time, and be concrete about what that really means. Maybe the starter home comes at 40, not 28. That is not failure. That is just the new timeline. Maybe you rent longer while you build the buffer, and you refuse to feel any shame about it. Maybe a smaller place, a cheaper city, a different definition of enough. None of that is giving up. All of it is playing the real board instead of grieving the old one. Third, guard your income like the asset it is. In a low hire, low fire market, the raise no longer comes from jumping. It comes from being genuinely hard to replace where you already stand. Skills compound over time. They are the one investment nobody can inflate away or repossess. And be specific about what hard to replace means, because it is not working more hours. It is doing the thing your team cannot easily hand to the next person. Learn the system nobody else understands. Become the one who fixes what others cannot. Take on the corner of the work that quietly runs everything. In a frozen job market, that is your real leverage. Not the threat to walk out the door. The simple, standing fact that they cannot afford to do without you. Fourth, kill the debt built to grow while you sleep. Delinquency is climbing all over the country. The last thing you want is to be one of the accounts feeding that number. Hit the high interest balances first. Shrink the monthly obligations before anything else. Because a smaller monthly nut is the closest thing to a raise. And you hand it to yourself, no permission required. Be ruthless here, and here is exactly why. High interest debt is the one force here that works against you around the clock. No days off. While you sleep, it grows. While you rest, it compounds. You cannot out-earn it, and you cannot ignore it. So you starve it instead. Every balance you kill is a payment gone forever. And that freed up money is yours, permanently, in a way a raise never quite is. And fifth, turn off the blame feed, at least for 1 hour a day. Not because the anger is wrong, because it is expensive. Every hour spent raging at a villain on a screen is an hour lost. An hour not spent on the buffer, the skill, the debt, the plan. The system is not asking for your calm. It feeds on your outrage. The quietest act of rebellion available to you is simple. Take the attention back and aim it at your own house. Notice what these 5 moves all share. Not one of them requires you to win an argument, or elect anyone, or wait for the world to finally get fair. Every single one is inside your reach, starting tonight. That is the entire point. The canyon is real, and it is not yours to close alone. But the buffer, the skills, the debt, the timeline, the attention, those are all yours. You do not get to fix the whole board. You do get to play your own hand well. And a hand played well on a hard board wins far more often than people think. So let me bring it all the way back to where we started. To that feeling. The one you cannot name. You are not crazy. You are not lazy. You are not imagining the pressure. The numbers are real. The wage to housing canyon is real. The $400 wall is real. The debt closing in is real. What you have been feeling is not weakness. It is an accurate read on a game that changed its rules and forgot to send the memo. And here is a part that is actually hopeful if you will let it be. Once you stop believing the old promise is coming back, you stop wasting your one life grieving it. You get to look at the real board with clear eyes and make your next move. The grief was never the price of caring. It was the price of denial. Sit the denial down and the energy it was eating quietly comes back to you. That energy is the only fuel you have. Spend it on the plan, not on the morning. Millions of people feel this exact thing tonight. If something feels off to you, you are not the only one, and that feeling is not a malfunction. It is the first honest signal that it is finally time to play differently. Maybe breaking down the real numbers behind everyday life is your kind of thing. If so, stay with this channel. There is more coming.